Welcome to Third Tuesday Conversation, the ELCA Youth Ministry Network's monthly podcast. Our goal is to engage in conversations affirming that youth ministry looks a million different ways in a million different places and with a million different experiences. Hey everybody, my name is Veronica Brito and I'm coming to you from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I have my buddy here.
Your buddy?
My buddy and me.
Yeah, kid sister. This is Alex LaChapelle coming to you from Marquette, Michigan in the Upper Peninsula. And Jess, go ahead, take it away. Jess isn't with us. It's all right. She has to do a trip. She's got some stuff going on, and our schedules did not align this year, and that happens sometimes, and or this month, I should say. But we're here with you. She'll be back next month. We promise. She promised. We scheduled it. We did right by her. But I think for me, the thing that I was hoping we could talk about, Veronica, is war, and one.
Good for.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. Say it again.
Nothing.
But there's the card game, which I thoroughly enjoy. I can play war for hours. Like, I actually think that's a very fun way to spend time.
Player war.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think right now, especially, this week I was thinking about, as we were getting ready for this one, what's going through these churches, these youth groups, these family conversations, pastors, youth directors, lay people. Somebody's going to ask you your thoughts about what's going on. And at some point, there's a good chance somebody's going to say, do you think we're going to war? And I have to be honest, I didn't get asked anything recently at a youth event, and I was really, really thankful. But I definitely heard some students say stuff about what was going on overseas with some implication of, well, we're going to war, or we're in war, or, one of our young people is thinking about military, and one of the leaders said, I get worried when I think about him because I'm worried that we're going to go to war. One of my campus ministry students has a boyfriend who just finished their basic, and she said something like, but I do get worried now that what he's signing up for is different than what he thought he was signing up for maybe a year or two ago. And so my open-ended question to you in the start of our conversation is, what comes to mind, or have you had any experiences, or have you overheard any people of any age kind of bringing this conversation to the forefront with you?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we have a family, in our church with the young men, and two of the young men, one was honorably discharged from the military a few years ago, and one is currently in the military at a base in California. So we constantly lift up our young men who decided to go into the military in prayer for safety, because, as you know, they could be called at any time. And so they have younger siblings. They have, nieces and nephews and people who are concerned, general members of the church. Also, just the effects of being involved in conflicts and wars in different countries. We have, different immigrants and new Americans in our church, and their home is being affected by some of these wars and conflicts that are going on around the world. And so you have people that, primary focus is on Iran, of course, on Palestine, and some of those higher end conflicts that are more covered in the news. But there are also people with conflicts also in Cuba, in Central America, and in many countries in Africa. There are conflicts going on that the United States has a hand in. And it's very conflicting if you're proud to be an American. If you have children or relatives or friends in the military, you want them to be safe. You want to be happy to be in this country, as there's so many conflicting messages as we're celebrating the 250th birthday of America. But at the same time, there's this internal conflict about what is America, what we started as, and where we are today. And so you see a lot of things out there about the 250th anniversary, but a lot of people are conflicted because they want to celebrate, but also there are a lot of things in the United States that can change, and peace could be one of those things.
Definitely. And I think you hit it on the head. The conflict isn't just the war that's going on, but it's actually also how our internal kind of justification works. And then, like you said, when we celebrate American freedom, when we celebrate America, I mean, 250 years is an amazing thing. And at the same time, it's 250 years after we started a war. You know, it's like America's whole thing starts with we won a war and then we became something. And I think that that's important because we have to talk about it. It's part of our history. We've had multiple wars within our history where America's felt threats internally, Civil War, as well as externally, you know, World War II. And then you have the conflicting wars like Vietnam
Hmm.
and things like that. And obviously the stuff that happened in the 2000s, you know, of like WMDs, things like that. So we know that there are enough storyboards for War II that allow us to say, grandpa, dad, brother, like we have had a war that kind of holds every generation in some way, shape, or form. So that when I'm sitting in worship, my first year as a pastor, we used to have one guy, he'd come in really early to our first service and he would drop off a check. And then sometimes he would just leave. I don't have time today. I got to go to work. He just hand me a check and go, good to see you. And I remember one time they had him come in and talk about his life because he was just an interesting guy. He kind of just lived a lot of lives in one life. And then someone said, but you were in the war, right? You were in World War II and he had parachuted. And and someone asked him a question. He just kind of said, I didn't really want to talk about this and like started to cry. And
Hmm.
so we also know the effect of war
Yes.
on some of our adults so that grandpa doesn't want to talk, dad doesn't want to talk, you know, brother doesn't want to talk, sister doesn't want to talk. Like we have all these things where a lot of people don't really want to talk about it. So then we're kind of left with a lot of groups of people who are say, I've never gone to war. I've never been in a war experience because I've never lived in a place that's been at war where it's actually in front of me. So then I can't really say anything. So then when the youth comes up to me and goes, what do you know about war? It's like, then it really is absolutely nothing
Hmm.
because I
Yeah.
don't really invest myself in too much, or I'll tell them historical stuff like we've fought in wars, we've won wars, and we've seemingly lost wars. But it's not with that depth of being able to really answer the question. Because one of the things like I was looking for questions that might come up. What are some things that youth maybe wondered? One of the things that I saw was like, why do wars happen? And
Mm.
there's like a part of me that wants to become the pastor of the year that's like, well, let me tell you about Adam and Eve and the fall. And it's like, don't go there.
Well, they
But
also say, why is there evil? You know,
yeah,
a lot of profound questions that youth have, as far as, well, we're Christians, we don't need to be in a war, or they'll even see the news. I mean, recently it was talking about the Pope, the Catholic Pope, and his challenges with our president, even as the Pope is American, from America.
Chicago.
And it doesn't even matter to our current administration that the disrespect is just there. And even though, we're Lutherans, we have respect for world leaders and different religions, and it's just hard to take. And it's hard to explain to youth that because we ask them to have reverence. We ask them to have reverence for the pastors. One time I was working in the church basement, and it's at the street level. It's a little bit under the street level. And I heard two young men walking outside by the church, and one of them maybe cussed or something, and the other one was like, "Hey man, we in front of the church." He said, he said, "Oh, all right, sorry."
Yeah,
They just kept
you go
walking.
down the street and then you just let it fly.
I just,
But you know,
no, they were out in the street. But he said, "Oh no, not while we were walking by the church. No, no, no." And so, just these questions that young people have about, well, if he can talk to the Pope or talk about the Pope like that, then why should I believe in this faith? Why, if these wars are happening and this and all of these things are happening, it's hard to have faith that things can get better. And so what do we as youth leaders and pastors do to encourage our youth that there is hope even in this dark time?
yeah, and that's such a good question because even if you crack your Bible, the first 2/3 of it is deeply like bathed in war, you know. And
Hmm.
then the Israelites fought this person, and then they destroyed all of them, leaving no human, no livestock left. Then they went over here, and you kind of find yourself going, I think I'm supposed to root for the Israelites because that's seemingly the main character, but also are the Philistines that bad? Like, or is it just like Goliath sounds kind of like a jerk, but were all the Philistines like worthy of destruction? Were all the Amorites? Were all the Canaanites? Like, insert all these places without really a story that we know. We just know that they stood in the way of what God was doing. And
Hmm. Yeah.
it's such an interesting space because then now we live in a place where some people say, well, God wants us, you know, to protect people. God wants us to stand up for people. God wouldn't give us the ability to do so. And then the question becomes like, how far do you take it? Like, you're strong, so you should protect your friend. Well, you can protect your friend, or you can also go over and like eliminate the bully by becoming the bully to the bully. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
which one should you do? Which one should you be? And I find myself sometimes having those conversations with youth and students saying, sometimes it feels like we're the instigator. Is that okay? Because I know that they're not perfect, or I know that they're not, good enough. And it's like, ooh, let me think about it and let's talk about that later. And I think that's a really important piece too, is like when somebody comes to you with a question, especially something as like seeped in war and conversation, I think it's okay to put a pause and say, I'd love to talk more. Let me think about that and come back with some questions, and maybe an open discussion is going to be that lifesaver over, trying to explain war or trying to define war. Because I think part of it is finding out everyone's definition. Why do wars happen? Well, you can quote the histories of why war happens, but then also, I think you go, well, why do you fight with your friends? It's like, well, disagreements, well, perceived hurt,
Hmm.
feeling that somebody doesn't respect you, all these things. You start to like tie it to like, so imagine that on a grand scale. Imagine that leader to leader, country to country, person to person. And then you say, and how do we get there with a group? Well, you convince another group that a whole group of people have very ill will for you, to you, about you, and that you can do two things. You can let them build up that hate till they hurt you, or you can stop it. And I think we tell those stories, on a daily basis with ourselves. And so how do you push that into those conversations to say, let's talk about war, but let's also talk about, the war within ourselves to do good or to do bad. The war that might not be a war, but might be a conflict, which is, maybe you have somebody in your family, somebody at school, somebody at work who stands in the way of a good time. And you go, should I be the one that strikes, or should I be the one that holds back? Um,
That's true. And I think
and
it's good to be prepared for these discussions. You said when the youth brings it up, then you can have time, then you know that your youth are actually asking questions. But I think when you look at the news, when you look at social media, this is a very important topic. You know that people are talking about it. You know that they're hearing their parents talk about it, their teachers are talking about it. So why not be proactive?
Yeah.
Look up Bible verses that youth can look up themselves. Share that with them in a text. Share that with them with a link to an article. And then when you have them in person, talk about it. Talk freely and openly without judgment about what they really think about it. There are definitely activities out there to help demonstrate to young people what war is, how it starts, how these conflicts start, and how they blow up into war. So I think with our youth, it's best to be interactive, to keep them to pay attention, but to also challenge them. We don't give our youth enough credit as far as understanding complex issues, but many of them are learning these things in school. So, shouldn't we take our due diligence and make sure that they're seeing it from a faith lens? Because if they only see it from a government lens or a power lens, then you're going to lose a lot of youth who are very anxious about the war, and they won't ask questions. They'll just take whatever they hear that's going on in the world around them, and they'll apply that to global issues. So I think in order to, and then also to not just tell the youth about this in a lecture style, but to have them experience by watching testimonials from people who have experienced things. Of course, you watch it first, and to vet it, but have them watching these things and pray about it together as a group, and
Yeah.
then have an action item to say, you and I can't stop this war, but what can we do here at home to make a difference for someone who is being challenged by this? What can we do for the veterans hospital? What can we do for people who are arriving in the United States, who are refugees? What can we do for military people who are in need of prayer or in need of help currently? Who can we write to? Are there any people in our congregation that we could write letters to? There's a lot of things that you could do to create action items so that the young people are connecting what they're feeling and what they're learning to real things that are going on. And that's what's going to keep them connected to each other and to church.
And I think it'd be really hard, but I think, if you set the parameters, even bring in somebody in your congregation, or if you know somebody even in your like church conference or, area, if somebody knows somebody that's willing to talk to kids about their experience. And I think it'd be really cool to see if you can get some generation, because like I've got a couple Vietnam vets, and it's really interesting. They talk about how when they got home that a lot of people didn't have anything nice to say to them. And then like some of them recently just did honor flights, and they said, I came off the plane, after going to Washington, D.C., I get back to the Upper Peninsula, I get off the plane and there's all these people clapping. He goes, and that's the first time someone clapped for me when I got back from the war. And like, or like from, something like that. And I remember thinking that's a lot to think about. Also, that's something really, really good to hear from somebody. And then on the flip side, maybe to talk to somebody that's younger who maybe has served in the last 10 years that might say a very different experience of how they've been treated, or maybe it's very, very similar. And to like let soldiers talk a little bit about the experience, not going into, like you said, the heavy stuff where maybe a child's not ready, but to say things like, my favorite part was, but I was scared and it was dangerous. It's kind of letting students say things like, it sounds like being in the military is both something that can build character and camaraderie and friendship, but also it's dangerous and it's scary. And you are training to do something that could hurt somebody else. And like to let students walk away with that knowledge, of these are some of the simple facts of what it means to be a soldier. And then, like you said, like bring in the conversation around those who've been displaced by war and also those who are being sent to war. And I think that would be huge. I always think to myself, we used to write letters when I was like in second grade, to people, and they'd give us a name and we'd write it. And I've heard some soldiers talk about, getting those letters both as like a high point, but also some of the weirdest things they've ever received is a kid that's like, you might die tomorrow. I hope you are okay. Like sometimes these kids, they don't know what to write, and the teacher isn't seeing the paper before it gets folded and shoved in the envelope. And like some of these kids are saying things like, oh,
Oh my
and
goodness.
we even saw that when we did a couple cards for old people,
Mm-mm-mm.
like our elders and stuff,
Not
and
little Jimmy.
and
No.
like yeah, little Jimmy's writing things like like life is short or something like that. It's like he's not wrong, but also like Jimmy, can you work on your phrasing? Um, but
No,
to
life is
be
short is fine. Your life is short is not fine.
I
You only
think he
have a
said,
few years
"Your
left.
life is short,"
Let it
you
ride.
know. And then he like, some of these kids are like drawing like little graves and stuff. Like I know it's almost,
Oh my
it
God.
was wild. Like when we had to decipher out. But I think that it all starts with a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
um and like I think to myself too. Sometimes when kids first hear about war or they see those footage, one of the conversations that comes to their head is, "Will I be safe if there's a war?" And
Mm-hmm.
then to be able to talk about safety, or to pair that with like what is it like for kids in war zones, and you have some really amazing stories of kids that have like lived through and have been able to kind of give voice to what it was like, or you can talk about like African child soldiers and start to work on some of the like what happens when you grow up in a space where everything feels dangerous, or you have to be on guard or run around or evade people and places and things, because war in your country has gotten rid of schools, has gotten rid of places to play, has gotten rid of all the things that you like to do, because they're all being pulled apart. And then I think with that, then you also have to start talking about like how can war be stopped, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how does war start? But then like can it stop? Does it ever end? And so I do think about how to talk about peace, how to talk about love, how to talk about reconciliation.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
two countries are fighting, and then if they stop fighting, does that mean they're friends again? And you're like, well, I wanna tell you, little Jimmy, yes, but actually, it's a strong distrust that's really just bubbling and
Little
boiling.
Jimmy doesn't understand it. But I always, when I think about talking to children about scary things, you often hear people, use that Mr. Rogers quote. That's, he would say, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people that are helping. And so
Yeah.
what Mr. Rogers said really resonated deep with me and a lot of people. You see, like even during COVID, the quote was used a lot, and during the riots and things like that, that quote is used. Major wildfires in California, like the quote pops up okay, a lot, and Mr. Rogers was very helpful in that way. But I think people have also added to what he said was that we can also, be the helpers. And so I think we have to leave that with children to say, when times are hard or you're scared or things are happening around you and you're not sure of if it's going to be okay. Number one, look for the helpers. Yes. But the second thing to do is then to be a helper. And so I think if we can leave that with our young people of any age, to teach them how to be volunteers, how to help, how to write effective letters, how to ask good questions,
Yeah.
how to think about, what would Jesus say? What would Jesus do? What does the Bible teach us about this? And what do we see in our own lives that are affecting us? But then also, what are we going to do about it in our own capacity? So a little person may not be able to write a letter or things like that, but they can get water. They can give out water to veterans. They can go up to the fire station and give cookies to the firemen who are there. There are things that they can do locally. They can be helpers. And so they can be peacemakers. And so that's our job as Christians, to teach children how to grow in that way, to be helpers, to have hope and to share that hope with others, and to also call out when things are wrong. And so, how do they do that in the times of war, in times of conflict, even at home, and then also throughout the world? And so, I think it's important. I've seen a lot of little tiny kids holding up signs. I said they did not make that sign because that sign is very good. Wrote that sign. But they're so cute.
Right?
But I think children really do know, um, what they feel is right, and they have good questions, and so we should never stifle uh, their innocence and their wanting to know what's going on. And there are ways for different age groups to share that with them and to say, okay, now that we know what it is, what can we do to make the world better?
Yeah. Well, and I think you
Challenge.
hit it on like beautifully. The idea, you were saying the Rogers quote, and then I started thinking about Luther's quote, right? Like, if the world's going to end tomorrow, I would still plant a tree, and whether Luther said that or not is up for grabs. But maybe the thing is not attached to the thing, right?
Hmm.
If your child is worried about war, or a student talks about war, it's like, we don't have to fix the war issue to go out and do something good for our community. And I think that's also one of the things that I need to remind myself of is when the wheels start spinning and turning and I start wondering and guessing, that I'm allowed to then say, I'm going to put this over here on the shelf and I'm going to go do something. Like, today is my favorite day of the month. It was Feeding America. And like, the interesting thing about Feeding America, I would say at least every other vehicle that comes through has somebody with a hat, or a shirt that says veteran. In Michigan, we don't have to have a front license plate. So sometimes the front of the license plate will say Army or it'll say veteran. And so a lot of times I find myself saying, thank you for your service. Now, I know that I have a lot of thoughts about like military and war and what we should or shouldn't be doing. But I
Hmm.
know for a fact that in that moment, saying thank you matters
Yes.
because they're standing in line to get food. Like,
Hmm.
and it doesn't mean that anything that they did is wrong or right, but it just means that that person's here to get some food. I have the opportunity to give them food. Why not say thank you for your service? Why not say, how are you doing today? But I just feel like it's that reminder that sometimes the service we do, whether for a veteran or for anybody, actually just makes the world a better place. Like, if you're afraid your country might go to war, just try inserting more love into it. If you're afraid that the things around you are about to battle, whether it be countries or your friends, insert love into it.
Hmm.
And that's part of this, problem is sometimes we don't even listen to our kids, and our kids ask questions that sometimes makes us slow down. Why are you fighting? And it's like, I don't actually know, like, why are you mad? I'm not mad. And then it's like, well, you are mad. But, when a kid asks it and you realize maybe there's nothing to be truly mad about,
Hmm.
sometimes children give us the most simple questions so that we can slow down. And so maybe it's even giving them the question, ask me anything, write it down, and then maybe you just put it in the back of the bulletin. Hey, I don't know who has kids, grandkids, godkids, or works in spaces where a child might say something. These are 10 questions that came up when we asked the kids of this congregation, what are you most worried about? What are the questions you have about war? So sometimes you can just let their questions be questions that maybe somebody didn't know kids were wondering about. So I just think whatever happens next, these questions and more are the things that I want to make sure I don't shy from, that I prepare a little bit for, but also that I let there just be an open space to let a child, let a youth, let a campus, student say, do you ever think about this, Alex? And the answer is, of course. And I wonder if you think about it too. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts, and being able to be that safe space that doesn't tell somebody the antidote, because I don't know that war has an antidote. Like, it's love and peace, but like it doesn't change overnight in the realities that we look at it. You know, like if I could snap my fingers and all that fear could be taken away, but it's going to take time for us to get out of this conflict. It's going to take, you know, more time with Israel and Palestine. It's going to take more time with Russia and Ukraine. It's going to take more time with warring areas in Africa and all the other conflicts, you know, that are described as warlike. And so in that time period,
It's a human condition.
Yeah, and if I can't fix it, then I might as well offer up the space to have the conversation. And so I hope this has been a helpful conversation, because it's, for me, actually, I feel actually a lot calmer than at the start of this conversation, just, you know, being able to voice it. So as we wrap up, just a few announcements. We had a fantastic extravaganza now a little while ago, but I know that the videos we had said to you, like, be patient, but now I want to say that they are there. You can find videos and things from the extravaganza. Maybe you need to rewatch something, or maybe you didn't get to go and you want to see some of the conversations. I found myself dabbling in the Andrew Root section because I love him and I think he's amazing. And I'll watch anything he says 10 times over. Okay. Martin's List has been refreshed. We've gone in and cleaned up this look, and we've done some work under the hood to make it faster and more efficient. Be sure to look there first for resources shared by your friends and colleagues. Maybe there's something about war. It's a great resource available to all our Plus level members for free. Thanks to all of you who are members of the network. Your membership makes possible Third Tuesday Conversation, Oasis, Connect Journal, Formation Co-op, Martin's List Extravaganza, and much more. If you're not a Plus level network member, we encourage you to join. Our memberships are what make all of this possible. We're grateful to be a community that cares for this ministry. Thanks so much for listening. New podcasts will be released on the third Tuesday of every month. Be sure to like and subscribe so you receive them as they come out, and share with your friends. And finally, thanks to the one, the only, Paul Amlin, the 3TC producer, for his work. Jess, we miss you, and we'll see you next month. Have a great week, and look for our next episode being released, you guessed it, on the third Tuesday next month. God's blessings. This is Alex signing off.
And this is Veronica signing off. Thank you, everyone.